Hello everyone, welcome back to our Maya 2020 tutorial series. We had finished our rig last lesson, but dun dun dun, there's something wrong with our rig. So I'm going to point out what it is, and yes, I could have gone back and fixed the videos to where this would have been caught to where you guys wouldn't have to walk through this part here and have a mistake that you guys have to fix, but realistically, you're going to end up building your own character rigs, and you're going to end up running into some of these issues, and knowing how to troubleshoot them is probably more important than knowing how to just go through it without having any problems the first time. So, problem is in these shoulders here, and the reason why is because when I had created these, the spline IK went too high. It's up in here, and that means that where the clavicle is attaching is inside the spline, which is going to cause the clavicles to freak out a bit when we move them. So what I'm going to show you the problem is, so that way you can understand how we're going to fix it. These two guys here, which control our shoulders, we have them to where they're parented into this control. But as soon as I move this control, you'll see that the shoulders are freaking out, and that's a big problem. So what we're going to do is we're going to go back and fix it. So I'm going to, let's just check and make sure that they didn't move in a weird place. Sometimes when you move them, they don't want to go back in their original resting spots. They are in the right spot, so that's good. So what we got to do is undo some of this. So the clusters, we're going to have to get rid of all the clusters. So we're going to select all 4 of these, and we're just going to delete them. We're going to select the IK handle, and that is at the top up here for the spline IK. And we're going to get rid of that as well. Okay, but that doesn't get rid of the curve. We still want the curve out of there as well. So let's go ahead and take a look at the root here. So you see this curve right there, and that belonged to the spline IK. We want that gone too. Okay, so that's all been disconnected. And while we're at it, we also want to disconnect our arms from the spine section. Okay, so I'm going to press Shift P, and that'll unparent it. Okay, so that's good. All right, so everything's been disconnected now, and now we can go ahead and move forward. I'm also going to go ahead and remove the IKs for the arms here for the time being. Part of the reason why is because they were using a single chain, and I think that they'll be better served using a rotate plane solver with this new situation. Okay, so this has been removed. All right, so now what we want to do is we're going to create a new spline IK and then put it back together. So this process will go a lot faster now that we have it all pulled apart. So what we're going to do is we're going to recreate that spline IK. So we're going to go to skeleton, and we're going to go to create IK spline handle. So same thing. And we're going to go through this a little bit faster because you guys have already gone through it once. So I'll put one here, and this time I'll have the spline IK end right here. Okay, so that's good. Now we have that curve on the inside again. So you see there's the curve, and that's what we want. We want the curve. That's where all the clusters are created, right? But we're going to try to accelerate the process. Since we already have our controls in place, is all we really need to do is we want to make sure that the clusters are created and that these things are reconstrained on the clusters, right? So if we want to go ahead and select our hip sway, our abs, our chest control, and our back control, and then we're going to control click our curve that's inside the bone root. You can see that one there. That belongs to the spline IK. All right, so let's go ahead and isolate this one here. There we go. And we're going to this time select our control curve here, and we're going to go to control vertex, and I'm going to go to deform and cluster. Okay, so there it creates our first cluster, and I'm going to go ahead and select the next one, control vertex, next one, and we're going to go to deform cluster. We can go ahead and hit the G key at this point rather than going back up to the menu set. It'll just be faster. So we'll go ahead and select the next one here, press G, that'll create another cluster. Okay, and the last one here, create control vertex, and G, there we go. Okay, that's all good. Now I'm going to make sure that these things are all constrained properly, right? So first, let's go ahead and make sure that these things are all named right. So we're going to go ahead and go back here and rename all these things. Yes, I know this is a little tedious because you already did it once, but we're going to do it again. Hips, well, we're going to go a little bit faster on it. Since you already done it once, this will go really quick. Hips, this one's abs. Next one is chest. And this time, this one is back. Now, if you guys didn't notice, I didn't really fully put this out there. I did say it, but maybe not to the extent you guys all picked up on it. But I lowered that spline IK down a joint, so now it's down lower. So if I unisolate these guys, you can see that now it's down here where like the final backbone is down here near where the clavicles meet up, which works out fine. And then the base of the neck starts out right here. So not a whole lot changed, but enough to where I just want to note that there are some differences. Like this part here, probably want this one to be lower down. And let's unparent these guys. I used these ones for an example earlier on, but I don't want them to be, I just unparent them, Shift P. I don't want them to be affected when I move this. So I'm going to move this back down. So I want this to still be snapped where that cluster was at. Okay. And when we move at the pivot point, so I'll press D, move the pivot point over there. There we go. Press D again, takes the pivot point back off. This one here is in the right spot already. This one here, good, that one's all right. And last one is where it's supposed to be. Okay. Let's just recheck all the controls, make sure that everything is in the right spot. This one here needs to be frozen because I moved it. So I'll refreeze the transforms on that one. Go back to the polygon modeling tab, freeze transforms. Okay. There we go. Let's go ahead and reconstrain this stuff and then we'll be good. So we're going to go ahead and select this one. We're going to go down to our cluster hips. And we're going to go to constrain and point constrain. Select this one, go to cluster abs, and I'll just press the G key to repeat last command, so accelerate our workflow. Select this last one here, go to chest, hit G, select the back one, select the back cluster, hit G. All right, so that's good. Perfect. Okay, now we want to have these guys parented back in. Okay, so I'm going to select this one, shift select this, not the IK handle, the joint, press P for parent. Now that one's parented back in. I'm going to select this one, shift select that one, press P for parent. There we go. So now they're both parented back in. So that's good. Oh, it looks like I didn't quite grab that IK handle from earlier. Let's get rid of this one. I'm going to remake it. Making sure I don't have any of those extra. All right, so we're going to go back to rigging. And like I said, the reason why I redid these ones is because I want to create rotate plane solvers versus single chains, just because they'll work a little bit better. Okay, so we're going to click on this one. That's good. And we're going to create another one from here to here, and that's good. Okay, let's go ahead and just rename these really quick again. IK shoulder right, and this one here is IK shoulder left. Okay, so that's good. All right, that's all fixed up. Let's go ahead and make sure these guys are in the right position. And where's their pivot points? I'll re-snap them down to where that shoulder's at. That's good. Same thing with this one. D for pivot, V for vertex snapping, just in case anyone forgot. Okay, so now we're going to select this one. We're going to shift select this one and go to constrain and point constrain. Same thing with this one. We're going to select that one, shift select this one, and I'll just press G because it's the same constraint. Okay, that's good. Now I'm going to create an IK handle that's going to control the neck. That'll do a little bit better job than what we had before. So we're going to go ahead and click on our IK handle tool, and we're going to use, again, a rotate plane solver. And we're going to click at the end of where our spline IK was and go up to here where the neck begins. And the reason why we do this is just makes it to where when we had a control before, we had control over where the joint went overall, which makes it to where it can actually be longer than it should be. This will control the actual length of the bone. Okay, so we're going to select this one here. We're going to shift select this one here, and we're going to constrain and point. Okay, so that's good. Now we're going to constrain this joint here. And this one already has one in place. Let's go ahead and remove all this. We're going to go and break connections. All right, so we're going to select the control, shift select the joint, and we're going to do constrain and orient constrain. Make sure that your maintain offsets option is turned on. If it's not, then this thing will flip off to the side, which is something we don't want to have happen. Okay, so now this thing can go forward and back, and it can rotate forward and back. Okay, so that's all good. So now our rig is all fixed. Now we're good to go. Let's make sure our spline IK is named appropriately. There we go. Okay, now we're doing good. Next, let's go ahead and create a global control. And this will be the last control we create. So this one's going to be a circle. So we're going to go to NURBS primitives and circle. And I usually like to have this one look a little different than the other ones. That way I know this is what this is. And there's no accidents as far as, oops, I grabbed the wrong control or any of that kind of stuff. So I'm going to go ahead and open up the inputs. I'm going to change the sections from 8 to 16. Now, if you guys can't figure out how to get this to work, or you can't get into this, it's underneath the inputs. But if you're struggling, this is just an aesthetic thing. It's not going to make or break your model. So it'll just make it to where it's easier to recognize as an animator. So I'm going to go to Control Vertex. I'm going to select every other vertex here. And I'm going to scale all of them to the center. There we go. And I'm just going to object mode. There we go. I'm going to add this back to the center. There we go. And I'll also freeze the transforms. So back to our poly modeling tab, freeze transforms. And I'll call this one global control. And you can call this master control. It's just all naming conventions. As long as it says control in there, that's all that's really important. Okay. So let's go ahead and do some prep work as far as getting the parenting structure down here and how we want this thing to work. Okay, so I want all these upper body controls to play nicely with this hips control. Okay, so I'm going to take this control and this control, and I'm going to parent them to my hips control. So I'll shift select this one, press P for parent. That way when I select this, it selects all the arms and elbows as well. These guys, I want them to be grouped. So we're going to group, and we'll just call this one GRP underscore shoulders, or control, shoulders control, sorry. All right, so that's good. And then we're going to take this group and we're going to parent it underneath the back control. So I'll hit P for parent for the back control. And same thing with the neck. If I'm pushing the back forward, I want the neck to come as well. So this one's also going to be parented into the back control. So when I select this, it selects all the upper part. That way when I push forward, you can see how it's pushing everything forward. And also, if you guys notice now that I'm pushing forward, you can see how I'm not getting any flipping going on with the collarbones, which was happening before that. So that fixed that. Okay, so that's good. But it doesn't necessarily make the arms do anything. So like these arms down here are still locked out, and that's fine. But they are parented to down to this. So that's good. Let's go ahead and add our chest, our abs, and our hip sway also to our hips control. So hit P for parent. And that way they're all parented down nicely into that. So there we go. And we also want this back control to be also parented. So that way, if I was to move this guy, it moves all that as well. So that's good. Make sure there's nothing funny going on. Okay, so there is a little funniness going on, and I want to explain what's going on here. You see how if I'm moving this forward, how his body's taking off here? And let me explain what's going on here. The spline IK creates this controller, or this curve that's on the inside of the spine. You see that? We've worked with it already a couple times. And what's going on here is that we have the hips control has a constraint on the root joint right here, right? So there's the curve that makes it the spline IK, right? So when I move my hips control, it's telling my curve here to move forward, which is causing everything else here to move forward. But the thing is that we also have constraints through clusters on that same control. The NURBS curve here, this one, is being controlled by all these clusters, which is being controlled by all these curves. So what we're having happen is that since all these curves here are parented to this one, they're getting what's called double transformations. It means that the movement of these guys is making it to where the movement of the NURBS curve here is being pushed forward because they're getting transforms from both this and this one, so they're multiplying is what's happening. So what we need to do is we need to actually have this removed from the hierarchy, and it doesn't render, so we don't actually need to worry about where it is in our scene as long as it's working appropriately. So if I unparent this, Shift P, so now it's down here, and I'll just go ahead and make sure I know what this is. So this is spline IK control curve, just so I don't screw around with that later on. Okay, so now when I move this forward, now we're all good. So that's a real big thing. Like, that's something that sometimes if you don't get told what's going on, that this can be really frustrating if someone doesn't spell this out to you. All right, so now we're good. This thing is working upper body wise just the way it should. I can turn it, rotate it, and that's all good. Okay, let's keep going though. So now we have our knees and our feet left. What do we do with those? We don't want to add them to our hips control. What we're going to do is we're going to take our feet control, which since these are both parented to it, that gets the knees as well, and then we're going to select our hips control, and then we're going to group it. So we're going to hit Control G, and we're going to call this GRP controls. Okay. Now what we're going to do is we're going to use our global control. Our global control is going to do a parent constraint on our control group. So we're going to go to Constrain, Parent Constraint. But we want something else. We also want there to be a scale constraint. That way we can make our model bigger or smaller depending on what our scene looks like. So we can go to Constraint, Scale Constraint. So now what I can do is I can take my global control and move it wherever I want to, and I can rotate it wherever I want to, and nothing happens to my model. That's all good. And I can scale it. But the problem is now, as you'll see, that I also have an issue with the joints locking down. Now that's a problem, right? Of course it is. That's going to make an issue for our model. So what we're going to do is we're going to take our joint here, our root joint, and we're going to group it. We'll hit Control G, and we'll call this one GRP underscore root group. Okay, and what we'll do is we're going to select our global control, select our root group, and we're going to go to Constrain, Scale Constraint. Now we're not doing a move or rotate because that doesn't really matter. We don't need to mess with the joints in that way. We just want to control the scale. So we're going to select the global control again. And now when I scale, you can see that the joints actually scale as well. Now there is a little bit issues, and it's probably really hard to see, but the joints are slightly moving. And the reason why is because the IKs aren't scaling. So yes, we also have to go and gather up all of our IKs. So we're just going to select all of our IKs, and we'll just come down here and make sure that we have all of them. And we're going to group those as well. So Control G. And these ones will be called GRP, IK, and that's it. All right, so now, as you probably guessed, we're going to select our global control, select our group IK, and we're going to go to Constraint, Scale Constraint. All right, so now we can scale, we can move, we can rotate, and our model works perfectly. All right, so that actually finishes the intermediate portion of our rigging process. Now, like I said, very shortly I'm going to have an addition to this rigging lesson that's going to be about doing facial rigging and individual finger articulation, and mouth and eye rigging as well. That will be added on here probably in about a month or two. So keep your eyes out if you like this lesson. I will be having another set that will follow that will plug in directly on top of this. It'll be in the same playlist. So thanks for watching about this particular rigging session. Check out the next playlist, and it will be in how to skin and weight our model. So thanks for watching, guys. I'll see you guys in the next lessons.